The beginning of the season is key in fantasy football. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily think to treat it differently, but your strategy for the first 5 weeks should be dramatically different than what you're going to see in the second half of the season. And the reason for this is there are no buys. You don't have a bye week until week 6 this year. Not only are there no buys, but you're not really dealing with injuries. Now, of course, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Brooks, TJ Hawkinson, yeah, those guys that when you took them, you already knew that they were going to be injured. You won't have them for the beginning of the season. But it's not like how it will be in week 10, where you're just having to send Brandon Cooks out there in your lineup and send up a prayer that he actually finds the end zone. So here are the 5 key things that you need to be doing at the beginning of the season to set yourself up for success for the entire year. The first key thing is going to be utilizing the IR slot in every way that you can. Now, the first very obvious thing is if you have a player on the PUP, check to see if they are IR eligible given your league rules. What's very funny is I go over to the Flock League where it's a combination of quote unquote experts, people who care way too much about fantasy football, such as myself and a bunch of other fantasy football YouTubers. And we have some regular Joes in there. We have the developers of flockfantasy.com. And one of those developers is sitting with Jonathan Brooks on his bench. Absolutely atrocious. All he would have to do is click one thing, move him down to the IR, and then he gets another roster spot to play around with. And he can potentially try to find the next Puka Nacua, find the next Kyron Williams that way. So you see that instance of somebody doing it wrong. And you see the other instance of somebody doing it, perfectly. And I'm extremely jealous. Sal didn't even draft Keaton Mitchell, but what he did is after the draft, he went, oh, Keaton Mitchell's on the waiver wire. Let me pick up Keaton Mitchell, move him into my IR slot, and then pick up Jordan Mason right after and essentially give myself the first waiver wire claim on Keaton Mitchell when he comes back in the middle portion of the season. So if there's any player that's currently on the PUP on your waiver wire, I want you to go out there, pick them up, put them on your IR. That way you can essentially get the first claim in deciding, do you want this guy when we get to week 5? Do you want this guy when you get to week 6? Because it's a free roster spot you should take advantage of. Now, the very obvious options, TJ Hawkinson, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Brooks. All 3 of these guys should have been drafted in every single league. All 3 of these guys should already be sitting in IR slots, unless you're Joe the developer who doesn't know what's going on. The second group will be Keaton Mitchell and Ricky Pearsall, where these guys may not have been drafted. But if you can go out there, just pick them up off the waiver wire, then immediately throw them into your IR, you essentially just get to roster an extra player for free. Now, the second thing that you need to do is spam trades and know your league mates. Here's what I want you to do before the day ends. You need to send one trade offer to every single league mate in your league. Now, no, I'm not expecting that the majority of these get accepted, because I will say maybe you should go ahead and you should send a low ball. Don't be disrespectful, right? Don't be disrespectful, but send a low ball, send a message to that other league owner. And this is just going to establish a couple different things. One, it's going to establish who can you actually get in contact with this season? Because I'm sure in your league, there are going to be a handful of owners that are super engaged, super active at the beginning, middle, and end of the season. And they're always going to be willing to make a deal if the price is right. Then there are going to be a handful of owners that maybe are really engaged at the beginning of the year. They lose interest in the second half of the season if they're not competitive. And then there will be those owners in your league that barely check in to submit their starting lineup each and every week. And it would be a really good just piece of information if you could kind of bucket these guys off and understand who are going to be the main trade partners for you this season. So one, you get to know the activity of the rest of your league mates. 2, you can see their trading styles, and there's a chance that one of those quote unquote low ball offers actually get accepted and you go, okay, this is my target through the rest of the year. And 3, and most importantly, it establishes that you are somebody that is willing to trade. If I go through and if I get a low ball offer from Zach in the Flock League, well, maybe I'm just going to hit reject immediately. Maybe it's not even good enough for me to counter. I'll at least know, hey, this guy's willing to trade. This guy is going to be active. And if all of a sudden I have Ramondre Stevenson for sale, he will be one of the people that I reach out to. and you want to make sure that you have that relationship with every single owner in your league. And speaking of knowing your owners, I would also go through and look at who they have on the trade block. Try to figure out who is their favorite team. An example of this is Badaki in the Flock League actually took both Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown. He has both of them on the trade block. He's a Giants fan. He said when he took them that he didn't want to. So what I did today is I offered Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle for AJ Brown and Saquon Barkley. I don't think it's too disrespectful of a deal. He doesn't want the Eagles. I'm fine having him on. I need a running back. So going through and sending that, in worst case scenario, he rejects, but it establishes that I am somebody that is willing to make a deal, especially if the value is right. Now I will say a deal that the value is right on this week is actually Kyren Williams to score a rushing touchdown against the Detroit Lions should be the highest scoring game of the week, according to Las Vegas Sportsbooks. And actually, if you take Kyren Williams to score a rushing touchdown against the Lions on Underdog Fantasy, they have what's called a vulture protection. So if Kyren Williams gets vultured by Blake Corum at the goal line, then you actually still get credit for that rushing touchdown for Kyren Williams. They have that for all running backs right now. I would 100% go and take advantage of it. And also, if you use code FLOCK with the link in the description or the comment section, you are also going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000, a Dak Prescott special pick'em more than less than half a total yard, a Christian McCaffrey special pick'em more than less than half a total yard as well, and you will get yours truly reviewing your fantasy football team if you use code FLOCK on an Underdog account during the 2024 season and at least make a $10 deposit. But let's go over and let's look at our next category. You need to be spamming the waiver wire at the beginning portion of the year. Now, I understand, yes, you like the guys that you just drafted, but this is why I talk about every single draft, the last 2 to 3 spots that you take, understand these are going to be guys that get cut very early on. You don't want to be rostering players like Roman Wilson, Jermaine Burton, that you take and you go, okay, I understand that they're not going to do anything early in the season, but I like their upside for later in the year. Because what's going to happen is you're going to feel like you can't drop them. You're going to go, okay, I can't drop Roman Wilson. He's a rookie. He was injured. I mean, I couldn't expect him to reasonably do anything week 1. Why can't I drop him now? But the thing is, if you give yourself that mentality, you're going to be missing out on the players that actually win leagues, because later in the season, what's going to happen is there will be players that come off the waiver wire that are exciting because of an injury in front of them, right? Where maybe you have an injury, say to Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby's the guy off the waiver wire that week, and all of a sudden he's a great bye week fill-in. All of a sudden he's great for 3 weeks before Travis Etienne comes back. But at the beginning of the season, almost every year, especially this past year, when you had Kyren Williams, when you had Puka Nacua as the top waiver wire options, you will find players that come out that we weren't expecting that all of a sudden are slated to crush through the entire season. So one thing that I see people making the mistake of is thinking that they need to roster those cloggers at the beginning of the season on the bottom end of their rosters, not chasing the high upside plays off waivers, thinking that they need to save their fab dollars where some players magically going to come out and crush at the end of the season, or save their top waiver wire claim dependent on their league settings because they think in week 4, all of a sudden the running back 1 is going to be the guy who wins your league off the waiver wire. So don't think you need to be saving your waiver wire slot. Don't think that you need to be holding on to these players that you drafted at the very end of your roster. Spam the waiver wire. The league winners are going to come from the beginning of the season, and that's where you're looking. Now, going back to trades, the main thing that I'm looking to do, understanding that you are going to be making so many waiver wire moves, you're going to be trying to pick up every player you can off waivers, is I want to make 2-for-1 deals. I want to make 3-for-1 deals at the beginning of the season. A big reason for this is, like we said, you don't have the buys, you don't have injuries, so you're really not having to concern yourself with a depth receiver like Shaheed, a depth receiver like Brandon Cooks, ever really making a difference in your starting lineup for the first month, for the first 6 weeks of the season. And if you think you don't have enough depth, you're going to have weeks on weeks on weeks where you can go hit the waiver wire every single week and hopefully find that depth wide receiver that we can play during the buys. So just going through and sacrificing that depth at the beginning of the year to make that 2-for-1 deal can easily win you some weeks at the beginning of the season by improving your starting lineup. If you improve your starting lineup, obviously that's going to be helping you during the fantasy football playoffs as well. And you have time to be able to work the waiver wire and to backfill that depth throughout the season. Now, of course, there will be levels to this. And by levels, I mean the replacement level player. The replacement level player is going to be significantly better in a 10-team league than it will be in a 14-team format. That player that you get off the waiver wire in a 10-team league, you could reasonably always find somebody to go through and start that week. So when you're looking at options down there on the bench, such as Ramondre Stevenson in that 10-team format, there, Ramondre doesn't really have much upside based off how bad his overall offense should be. He's a high floor, low ceiling player that in a league where you have that high replacement level value coming off waivers, a 10-team format, Ramondre is the perfect example of a player that you need to put in that 2-for-1 deal, get back an improvement in the starting lineup. And what you are wanting to do to gauge this is every single time you go to make a trade, you need to be looking at the best player on the waiver wire and mentally throwing them onto the other side of this trade. So let's say hypothetically, you were to go through and you were to try to trade Christian Kirk and Ramondre Stevenson for James Cook. Right? Let's just stay on this one. You're sending Kirk, Ramondre for James Cook, and you may be sitting here going, oh, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. And then if you're playing in a 10-team league, you can go to the waiver wire and you can see, oh, Darnell Mooney's available on the waiver wire. Darnell Mooney would be my pickup, so let me throw Darnell Mooney to the James Cook side of the deal. And then all of a sudden it looks very different where you are trading Ramondre Stevenson and Christian Kirk for James Cook and Darnell Mooney, and that looks extremely appealing. Whereas in a 14-team format, if you were to go through and do this exercise and you say, well, you know what, Marvin Mims is the wide receiver I'd pick up, and then it looks like you're trading Ramondre Stevenson, Christian Kirk for James Cook and Marvin Mims, maybe it's a little bit less exciting there. So it's a very easy thing to just go ahead, look at if you're making a 2-for-1 deal, if you're making a 3-for-1 deal, the players that you would pick up off waivers with the empty bench spots you were going to have, add them to the other side of the trade, and it gives you a great sense of what the replacement level player is actually worth. And vice versa with this. Say you're going to be somebody that you're trading one guy and you're getting 2 players in return. What you need to do is you need to take the player that you would drop off of your team. If you have the open roster spot, take the player that's best available off waivers, because that's what you're pretty much sacrificing is that waiver wire pickup. And you need to go ahead and look at it from that point of view. So if you were the team that is trading away James Cook, you need to go, okay, well, at this point, if I'm getting Christian Kirk and Ramondre Stevenson, maybe I also need to drop Adam Thielen, right? So you put Adam Thielen on your side of the deal because you need to open up that roster spot, and all of a sudden it looks like you are giving up a lot more. Now, last but not least, this is probably the most important thing here, is make sure you set up the league to have fun. Be active in your chat, be sending trades, engage with people, message the other owners, talk some smack, talk some trash, right? Fantasy football is meant to be fun. It's a lot more fun if everybody in the league is involved, everybody in the league is chatting. If it's a league where the chat is completely silent for 3 months and everybody's just setting their starting lineup and that's it, there are going to be fewer trades made in the league. People are going to pay attention to it less. It's going to be less fun, less likely to happen the following season as well. So every chance you get, I'd be the annoying guy in the chat, spamming them, letting them know what's up, letting them know that you are winning this week. But you don't have to be super, super rude, but just let them know you have the best team in the league. But thank you again. Really do appreciate you. Really hope that we were able to help you out in some way with this. And of course, if you wanted to take advantage of that vulture protection, take Kyron Williams to score a rushing touchdown this week against the Detroit Lions. And you can find that link in the description, comment section. Code FLOCK will get you a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you will get a Christian McCaffrey special pick of more than less than half a total yard, a Dak Prescott special pick of more than less than half a total yard, and yours truly will break down your fantasy football team live in a stream if you use code FLOCK on Underdog and make at least a $10 deposit in the 2024 season. But I think that's all I got for you. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day and hope I get to break down your team in the live stream tonight.